This is Part 2, Episode 6. Ghostly had been standing there. There was also no expression on his gaunt face. Quietly listening to Xiao Bai, after a long while, he softly said, "I am not confident, but what can I do?" Xiao Bai bit her lips, angrily said, "Don't play the fool with me, how would you not know? Now you only need to discard this evil object immediately, and then take the Inferno Mirror to a place of pure yang. With the earth fire stimulate Inferno Mirror pure yang into your body. This is the only way for you to survive." Ghostly looked at Xiao Bai for a while, suddenly laughed. That laugh seemed inconceivably innocent, as if in the distant 10 years ago, that simple young man. Then, he slowly turned around, using the wall to support himself and walked away. Xiao Hui immediately ran to its master, scurried up to his shoulder in a few movements. Xiao Bai stared blankly at that determined yet fragile back. Suddenly loudly shouted, "You wanted to die, right? In your heart you just simply want to die, right?" Ghostly's body paused but did not look back, did not speak. A moment later, he continued to move forward. Xiao Bai's voice came loudly behind him, "You want to die, dream on. How many debts that you are still owing to people have not paid off and you want to just die off like that? Impossible. You don't want to listen to me, right? Good, you are great. Then I will go myself. I will find 8 Immortal Inferno Formation incantation, let you save yourself. You remember this, Bai Yao is still lying in the cold stone chamber, before she wakes up. Even if you want to die, it is also not up to you. It is not up to you, not up to you, not up to you." In the long quiet tunnel, the echoes faintly reverberated. Ghostly with his face bleak, his body slowly straightened, but in the end he still never turned back to look. Lush forests, quiet valley, dawn in the venomous Serpent Valley was actually tranquil, but at this moment, the earth slowly shook, the smell of blood turning stronger. The countless snakes that had gathered at the border of the valley suddenly disappeared. As if somehow they sensed something, those reptiles all went into hiding. A black smoke appeared a distance from the valley, swiftly approached. A thick and suffocating smell came forth from the sky. The gathering loud roar turned into a great crushing deafening roar. Nearer and nearer. It was innumerable monsters, like vicious ghosts and ferocious spirits charging out from the 9 netherworlds, blood-red eyes, sharp fangs, sharp cries assaulting face on. Various kinds of strange monsters formed a surging stream of unstoppable force. In front of this turbulent wave, there was no one that could stop it and survive. Even the forests on the sides of the road, in the thunderous roars, was rapidly swallowed by the flood. There was no hesitation, no pause. This flood directly dashed into the venomous Serpent Valley, like a black tide instantly pouring into the green sea. In every corners of the forest, horrified snakes were thrown out unceasingly, desperately struggling in the torrent, but all without exception instantly drowned. Even that poisonous colorful miasma could not stop this terrible flood of demon beasts. The first several monsters at the front fell dead to the ground, but even more trampled on their comrades' bodies and charged past. The powerful hurricane in an instant scattered the miasma, dispersing above the forest. Within the black torrent of evil beasts, there were 4 or 5 sturdy beasts that looked several times bigger than the average monsters, brandishing their claws and fangs, leading their men ahead. And at the entrance to the valley, there were still countless of monsters charging endlessly into the valley. The entire valley seemed to be quaking. It looked like the world's apocalypse. At the other end of the venomous Serpent Valley, standing at a vantage point, Ghost King took a deep breath. Although he had seen the evil beast's might, but the sight before him still made him turn pale. He composed himself. After pondering for a moment, he again looked to the forest to the north of the valley. Under the morning sun, the forest indistinctly reflected light. A hint of sneer slowly surfaced on Ghost King's lips. "One day, all of you will know, in the end, who will be the winner." He shouted in his heart like that. The expression on his face slowly hardened. Bai Yao is no longer around. Then, let the world make up for it. He slowly turned around. Behind him in the dense forest was Ghost King disciples. They packed the forest, their fighting morale high. Ghost King watched the people in front of him, countless eyes staring in his face. At that moment, who would know his feelings? Slowly raising his arm, it seemed to turn leaden. Distant cries of roars and the gradual cries of fear and shock also seemed to have traveled here. Ghost King's face suddenly changed. Then, he swung his arm heavily down. His arm like knife, like a sharp sword slicing the world, cutting off the last warmth, tearing apart the dreams that once existed. that sound made by the arm in the wind, like bones fracturing from a stab in the chest. Countless people, behind his majestic back, made war cry sounds, lifting their sharp swords in their hands and charged down, their clothes flying up. A strong breeze blew, the trees swayed in the forest, like it was dancing for this. Ghost King stood among the crowd, like a hard cold rock unmoving. He turned and looked at the forest in the north. There was also movement in the forest there, gradually spreading. Ghost King laughed. He suddenly laughed crazily in the sea of people who were going to meet their deaths. That laughter was so piercing, but no one dared to ask him. Only the morning sun, with its faint warmth, still continued to leap towards this crazy mortal world. 7 days later, entrusted by Reverend Dao Xian, Pu Hong Master and Yun Yi Lan and the other good faction leaders, a group of good faction disciples set off from Qingyun Hill, reached southwest. Due to the gravity of the matter, the 3 factions had sent their most talented disciples. As if coincidence, these people had already met. Qingyun sect Xiao Yi Cai, Lin Jingyu and Lu Shueqi, Qianyin Temple Fa Xiong and Fa Shan, Fenxiong Valley Lizun and Yanhong, a total of 7 people. After setting off from Qingyun Hill, they were cautious on their way, traveling by night, trying to avoid encountering the demon beasts on the road, going at full speed to southwest, hoping to find out the reason behind for the sudden change of direction of these large number of beasts to this place. Just when these good faction disciples had just set off, although they were clearly aware of the great danger, but for the common people, no one had any intention of retreating. However, on the 7th day after they had set off, all of their faces had turned pale, and did not speak for days, including the most eloquent Xiao Yi Cai, the calm and stable Fa Xiong, and even Li Zun, who had wanted to speak to Lu Shueqi. All turned silent. Thousands of miles further into the south, the situation became more tragic. If it was not the entire village, entire city of corpses everywhere, dense white bones, it was one after another deserted village and city, fertile lands turned into scorched earth. Nobody knew. How did these demon beasts know how to set fire? Why were they so savage and bloodthirsty? Like nobody knew, when would this catastrophe end? The indistinct faint ghost wails, like it would always reverberated in the wilderness of the southern vast lands, describing the desolate and miserable past. After entering the southwest province, they were even more cautious, but right now they faced an even bigger problem. First of all, they simply could not find any local residents. All the people either fled to the north or died tragically in this catastrophe. So, these good faction disciples were unable to find the locals and ask them about the demonic beast movements. On the other hand, most of those beast demons were unable to communicate with humans, even if they were to risk it and capture a few monsters. But the monsters would most likely only struggle and roar. How would they get information from them? They had no alternative, and after discussion, they could only follow Xiao Yi Cai's proposal and secretly follow the demons. Wherever there are bigger groups of demons gathering, they would head there, to see what exactly these demons are planning to do. So they tracked in the southwest for 3 days and 3 nights, during which several times they were almost discovered by monsters who had sharp hearing and sense of smell. Fortunately, Xiao Yi Cai, Fa Xiong, Fa Shan, Lin Jingyu etc. were all extremely smart people, and each time they managed to escape within a hair's breadth at critical moments. But nevertheless, they still did not found out anything. Just when they were beginning to lose heart, by accident they actually found one evil sect disciple, who had gone crazy in one of the forest, after they had asked in detail. Or it could be said under their patient coaxing, gradually they learned that the large number of demons entering into southwest was to have a huge battle against the evil sect. And the results, of course the evil beasts won. The once arrogant evil sect 3 branches were almost wiped out in this battle. The news immediately made everyone shocked and stunned, and in the crowd, standing the furthest, Lu Zueki's face had turned especially pale. Looking at pitiful person, who had shrank into a ball and constantly mumbling monster, monster, at times suddenly shivering from head to toe, shrieking, the 7 good faction people felt their hearts were shrouded by a layer of heavy shadow. Xiao Yi Cai coughed, looked at Fa Xiong, said, Fa Xiong senior brother, now that we are generally clear about the situation, what do you think we should do? Fa Xiong frowned, looked down at the pitiful person on the ground, sighed and said, Amitabha Buddha, it is a sin, a sin. Pausing for a while, Fa Xiong slowly said, everyone, actually the purpose of our trip, the gist of the situation we now know, lowly monk me think that we should first return and report about this situation to the various elders. No. Suddenly, A cold voice was heard from beside. Everyone was startled. The person speaking was actually the quietest one on the trip, Lu Shueqi. Fa Xiong, feeling surprised, said, Lu junior sister, if you have any other views, please speak. Lu Shueqi, still looking pale, but her voice was very calm, lightly said, what we know now came from this crazed evil sect disciple, and his words were incoherent, and we made many speculations on our own. If we assumed we have finished our mission just based on this, I think it is not appropriate. Fa Xiong was silent. Everyone looked at each other. After a moment, Fa Xiong nodded and said, that's right, Lu junior sister is right. Lowly monk me was too anxious just now. Xiao Yi Cai pondered a moment, said, there is some truth in what Lu junior sister said, but these few days we have been checking day and night in the southwest, and there was not a slightest clue. Don't tell me we have to continue searching like this. Lu Shueqi's mouth moved, but did not speak. Apparently facing the two difficult obstacles before them, she too could not think of any good solution. But at this moment, Li Zun, who was frequently taking glances at Lu Shueqi, suddenly stepped forward and said, I have an idea, maybe it has some hope. Everyone was surprised. Even Lu Shueqi took a few more glances at Li Zun. Fa Xiong delightfully said, really, Li senior brother, please say. Li Zun inhaled deeply, forced himself not to look at Lu Shueqi, said, I have listened carefully to the madman's words, heard him mentioned one place several times, called Venomous Serpent Valley, not sure if anyone notices. Xiao Yi Cai nodded his head and said, yes, I have also noticed. I have heard of this Venomous Serpent Valley before. It is said to be a valley deep inside the southwest mountains here. Numerous poisonous snakes resides in it. There is also highly toxic miasma in the forest and is fatal to human. No one has dared to enter this forest. As time passes, no one knows the specific location of the valley. Lin Jingyu suddenly said, does Li senior brother thinks that this battle could be taking place at the legendary Venomous Serpent Valley? Li Zun nodded, determinedly said, yes, I infer that the battle would happen at this valley, and more than that, I think maybe this valley might be one of the 3 evil sect branches' headquarters. As long as we can find it, naturally we will know if the words of this crazy person are true. Yan Hong, who has been keeping silent, suddenly said, but senior brother, it has already been so many days. Let's not say whether can we find this Venomous Serpent Valley. Even if we found it, the scene over there might have changed from the original. Li Zun coldly said, junior sister, don't tell me you have forgotten. Those cruel demon beasts indeed know how to eat humans and set fire, but after the fire, there would be ruins. The demons eat humans, but they do not eat bones. Everyone's expressions changed. Yan Hong turned even more pale after listening to him, suddenly felt nausea. Clearly what they had saw on their way was enough to make this lady reached her psychological limit. Li Zun sighed and did not speak anymore. Fa Xiong and Fa Shan both quietly chanted. Xiao Yi Cai shook his head and walked over to Yan Hong's side, quietly comforted her with a few words, until Yan Hong slowly settled down. He then turned and walked to that shivering evil sect disciple, crouched down. Do you know where is the Venomous Serpent Valley? Xiao Yi Cai tried to make his voice as soft as possible and sounded peaceful, but that evil sect disciple's body shook, buried his head lower, did not speak. Xiao Yi Cai asked 3 more times, but the evil sect disciple seemed to turn deaf, and did not have any reaction. Xiao Yi Cai slowly stood up, looked at the group, no one spoke. Xiao Yi Cai only sighed and said, how? Li Zun, who was standing by the side, frowned, suddenly walked to the evil disciple and pulled him up, loudly asked, where is the place where those monsters are killing people? The evil disciple's body shook greatly, his face immediately changed into fear, opened his mouth and made a shrill scream, but Li Zun, like his heart was stone, held him tightly, loudly shouted, where is the place where those monsters are killing people? Deeply entrenched in fear, that evil sect disciple was trembling, his teeth chattering, eyes filled with fear, but his head involuntarily looked to the north. Li Zun's eyes froze, urgently said, it's in the north, is it? The evil sect disciple's head suddenly tilted, his entire body slackened, everyone was shocked and quickly went up to check. His pupil had dilated, a check on his nostrils, he had stopped breathing, he had died. Li Zun slowly put down the body of the man, stood up, faced the north, everyone looked towards where he was looking at, in the sea of forests, under the bright clear day, there seemed to be a blood-colored cloud, shrouding above it. Majestic Fox Mountain, where the evil sect Ghost King sect headquarters was located, shrouded in a samba, the original mighty great branch. More than half of its men were dead in a sudden, no matter to whichever mighty sect under the sky. It would also be a heavy blow. So many valiant disciples, high in battle morale however returning, was only Ghost King alone bathed in blood. The lingering shadows, on every person in Majestic Fox Mountain, their hearts and faces, nobody knew, the cruel and ferocious demon beast's next victim. Who would it be? After Ghost King returned, he went straight to closed-door seclusion. Nobody dared to ask him, but the people did not have to wait for a long time. Soon, the news came one after another. Things also gradually cleared up. In this Southwest War, the evil sect three factions with their combined unprecedented force against the demon beasts. As to why would the three factions collaborate? Or was there another scheme, other than Ghost King? Most probably nobody else knew. The result of this battle could said to be the most painful failure of the evil sect since 1,000 years, not to mention Ghost King's sect losing more than half of its men. Du clan first suffered greatly from its internal strife, followed by the attack of the demon beasts in venomous Serpent Valley. The remaining elite disciples almost were dead or injured. As for the seclusive He-Huan sect, for some reason this time, also led its entire sect force in this battle, and their fate too, before the endless army of beasts, a total defeat. At this moment, the defeated Ghost King sect was in a state of panic, but no matter what, their situation at the moment was still far better than Du clan and He-Huan sect. Most of the Ghost King sect's elites were left at Majestic Fox Mountain, therefore the main core strength was not affected. And Du clan and He-Huan sect after this battle, whether did anyone make it out was also uncertain. This day, after recovering for many days, while the sect disciples were speculating uneasily, Ghost King reappeared before his disciples. As for that big defeat, Ghost King did not even mention it and instead immediately issued a number of commands. Very soon, the entire Majestic Fox Mountain began to stir. Everyone started to pack for traveling, packing up things, preparing dry provisions and water, because the last instruction in the list of commands by Ghost King clearly stated one thing: due to the Central Plains demon beast turmoil and the Holy Sect's severe defeat, for the future of the Holy Sect, he had decided, the entire Ghost King sect would move together to Northwest, to the Wildlands, to that legendary Holy Sect birthplace, Wildlands Holy Temple. In the hectic scene, Ghost King expressionlessly clasped his hands behind, walked towards that ice-cold stone chamber deep inside the mountain. The upcoming road trip was thousands of miles, and the Wildlands was desolate, hot and dry. With Bai Yao's current condition, she was not suitable for the long distance to the Wildlands. Initially Ghost King intended to request Xiao Bai to look after Bai Yao, with the nine-tailed celestial fox's 1,000 years of skills, including the defensive traps in the mountain. It would be absolutely safe, but now that things had changed. Ever since he came back, for some reason, Xiao Bai had disappeared. He asked several people, but nobody knew where she had gone. Thinking of this, Ghost King's brows slightly wrinkled. Unknowingly he discovered he had arrived at the stone chamber where his daughter was lying. He sighed, opened the door and went inside. Ghost Li was standing there, quietly accompanying Bai Yao. He heard movements behind him, but he did not even glance back. Ghost King slowly paced, walked to Ghost Li. Standing beside him he looked towards his daughter who was quietly lying on the ice-stone platform, that pale and beautiful face as delicate and beautiful as before. As if in the other world she knew too, in the world the two men who were most concerned about her, whom were also as important as to her, were by her side. Her face was very quiet, very calm, very at ease. Ghost King watched Bai Yao for a long while, a faint glint in his eyes, a rare tender. After a long time, he let out a long sigh, lightly said, "Why are you not packing up your things?" Ghost Li did not lift his head up, and did not directly answer him, instead asked Ghost King, "I heard in the vicinity of the Wildlands. It is either the bleak Gobi Desert, or the vast expanse of the desert, exceptionally hot all year round, is it?" Ghost King nodded his head and said, "Yes, when I once visited the Wildlands Holy Temple, the climate is indeed the case." Ghost Li frowned, said, "Then how can Bai Yao go, now that she in this condition? How can she take the suffering?" Ghost King glanced at Ghost Li, said, "I never intended to bring Bai Yao to Wildlands." Ghost Li's expression changed, looked over at Ghost King. Ghost King said, "The Wildlands is desolate, dry and hot. It is indeed not suitable for Yaoa. I intended to let her stay in Majestic Fox Mountain. After we leave, activate the mountain's defensive traps and gears, close up the entrance, as such it is very safe. But in any case, there has to be someone to come in at least once a month to check, so as to prevent any accidents. Ghost Lee stood up and said, leaving one person, who is it? Ghost King lightly said, I wanted to entrust to Xiao Bai. Her cultivation is high and is very willing to take a few years of good rest in this majestic Fox Mountain, but for some reason, I could not find her these few days. Ghost Lee's expression slightly changed. Ghost King noticed it, said, why, you know where she is gone. Ghost Lee slowly shook his head, was silent for a moment, said, let me stay here to take care of Bai Yao. Ghost King gazed intently at him, said, I am certainly assured if you take care of Bai Yao and I also trust you, but now that the holy sect is heavily wounded, I intend to revitalize our prestige. Firstly we have to stabilize the people, unify the holy church, need someone with talents like you around. Ghost Lee's eyes for the first time left Bai Yao, slowly shifted to Ghost King. Suddenly said, this time the war with the demon beast, those disciples that followed you are all dead. Ghost King's expression changed, the glint in his eyes flared. This was the first time someone had dared to mention this matter to him, but he was not angry, only looked deeply at Ghost Lee and then slowly said, all are dead. Ghost Lee looked away, back to Bai Yao again, after a long while, said, after this big battle, although the evil sect is seriously weakened, but Wandu clan and He Huan sect are also completely defeated, to our Ghost King sect whose strength still remains, it cannot be denied that it is a good opportunity to unify the evil sect. With the current situation as such, even without me, there is no longer any power that can compete with you. He quietly said, but over at Bai Yao, still needs someone to look after, just let me stay to take care of her. Ghost King looked at him for a moment, nodded and said, since you say so, I will not force you. I will entrust Yao to you. I believe you will be able to take good care of her, but remember this, the demon beast's strength is terrible and their senses sharp, just in case. It is best to seal the mountain entrance, and you can probably come and check every 1 or 2 months, as such there won't be any mishaps. Ghost Lee slowly nodded, considered he had agreed. Ghost King looked at his daughter again, a moment later, he uttered a sigh, turned and walked out. When he was about to reach the door, suddenly Ghost Lee's voice was heard from behind him, sect head. Ghost King was stunned, felt somehow unexpected. Ghost Lee rarely took the initiative to speak out. This time he suddenly spoke, puzzled what it was for, immediately said, what? Ghost Lee was silent for a moment, suddenly said, do you hate me? Ghost King back facing him, did not move, did not speak, and could not see his expression. Ghost Lee slowly said, Bai Yao is like this because of me, in your heart, is it that you hate me a lot? His face was indifferent, as if he was talking about a topic that had nothing to do with him, but Ghost King still did not speak. In the stone chamber, the two men with their backs facing each other, the tension in the air seemed to thicken. The light mist, gently drifted up from the ice-cold stone platform underneath Bai Yao's body, floated in the air, for an unknown length of time. Suddenly the stone door was heard opening. Ghost King did not say anything, quietly went out. Rumble. The heavy deep sound, the stone door once again shut, leaving only Ghost Lee beside Bai Yao. His expression was wooden, staring blankly at the woman in front of him. In the ancient and dense primitive forests, along with the wind came a horrible and burnt smell, like an ugly scar. Everywhere in the original exuberant forests, it carried the signs of destructions from the demon beast's rampage. Huge trees lying on the ground in disorder, numerous forest animals' corpses littered everywhere, the entire forest's tranquility had vanished. On the second day after they discovered the crazy evil sect disciple, Xiao Yi Cai, Fa Xiong etc., the entourage of 7 good faction disciples, following along the gradually turning obvious demon beast's trail, approaching the valley hidden deep in the mountains. The forests that they passed by on their way replicated that scene, although human bones were not seen, but they were still disturbed by the scene. In many of their minds, even coincidentally at the same time, reflected, do those demon beasts really come to this world just to kill? This day at noon, the group of them appeared on that decrepit ancient path outside Venomous Serpent Valley. The area here showed such clear signs of the monster's destructions that they almost did not have to spend any effort to investigate. That path was widened from the stampede made by the demon beasts, giant footprints and sharp claw marks were everywhere. The air still carried a foul smell. Other than that, there seemed to be a faint unbearable stench, but nobody could tell what it was. Looking at the valley entrance, inside and outside was similarly in a mess. The forest and ground which was ravaged by that terrible flood was clearly visible, the ancient path meandered and twisted. Who would know in that valley what is exactly there? For some reason, all of them looked a little nervous, caught in an awkward silence. In the end, Xiao Yi coughed once, but then discovered that his own throat was dry and painful. He composed himself, said, "Everyone, it seems that the evil sect disciples did not speak a lie. It should be here." A big battle happened between the demon beasts and the evil sect. He looked around, hesitated for a moment, then asked, "Shall we go in and see?" No one spoke, even Li Zun's face looked pale. A moment later, Fa Xiong, who stood beside Xiao Yi quietly chanted, said, "Since we are here, we should no longer say to give up, let's go in." Actually everyone there knew that. Just that for some reason, there seemed to be something strange in the valley, stealthy affecting everyone's moods, striking fear in their hearts. Fa Shan, who had always following his senior brother Fa Xiong, with a low, muffled voice acknowledged and walked over to his senior brother. "Let's go." The one who said this was not Xiao Yi, but Lin Jingyu. His hand tightened over the dragon slayer sword and then his face solemn, took the lead into the valley. Following behind him was Lu Shuiqi. Li Zun too immediately kept up. Xiao Yi and Fa Xiong looked at each other, saw the worry in each other's eyes, but a moment later, everyone still went in. The vast valley, the boundless forest, the group walked along in the valley, surrounded by only a dead silence, not to mention animals, even the usual cries of birds were missing. The valley seemed to have become a lifeless evil spirit. The foul smell of the beasts was a strong, but as they went deeper, everyone started to frown tightly. Right now, following the mountain breeze, the other stench made one feel nauseous and turning thicker. The mountain road twisted and turned. The crowd was on high alert against their surroundings, slowly moving forward. In a corner ahead of them, there was a coal. When they arrived here, the stench in the air had reached an unbearable stage. Suddenly, Yan Hong, who was in the middle, suddenly dashed to the roadside. Everyone was startled. Li Zun exclaimed, "Junior sister, what happened to you?" He stopped halfway, because he and everyone saw Yan Hong standing on the weeds beside the path, vomiting hard. No one laughed, because nobody knew how long they could hold on, although the valley still had not revealed its true colors. But it seemed to be more terrible than most places on earth. Yan Hong panted and stopped, looking pale, walked back to everyone and whispered, "Sorry, I really." Fa Xiong forced a smile, said, "Yang junior sister, it doesn't matter." Xiao Yi also said, "That's right, nobody can stand the smell too, you don't have to mind. If you don't feel up to it, why don't you first go out of the valley and wait for us?" Yan Hong hesitated a moment, but shook her head and said, "Let us go." Li Zun walked over, faced Yan Hong and nodded his head, a comforting look in his eyes, quietly said, "Take care of yourself, don't force yourself." Yan Hong nodded and promised. Xiao Yi turned and said, "All right, let's continue on. We don't know what monster or danger lies ahead, everyone must be careful." All of them nodded and once again went forward. Lin Jingyu was still at the lead, approaching nearer to that coal. He held the dragon slayer sword in his hand, his palm started to sweat. By now the air was so thick with the stench smell that it was hard to breathe. Lin Jingyu's face turned slightly pale, clenched his teeth, strided across, passed around the corner of the coal, and saw the scene in the valley. His whole body instantly turned stiff. The group behind him immediately noticed his abnormal reaction, and could not help, but became nervous. Xiao Yi quietly called Lin Jingyu twice, but he did not respond at all, only staring ahead. Lu Shuiqi was the second person to walk over, then Li Zun, Yan Hong, Xiao Yi Fa Xiong and Fa Shan. One by one they passed through the coal, saw the scene in the venomous Serpent Valley. Then, every one of them was stunned. That would probably be the legendary Azura Hell. Such a terrible scene appeared under the clear and bright blue sky. Countless bodies inside and outside that residence inside the valley. There were humans, also various demon beasts and monsters. Some were complete, but many more were limbs and miserable bodies, torn apart until it was unrecognizable, densely packed everywhere, almost to a point where gaps could not be seen. After composing himself with an effort and walking further into the valley, the scene became more tragic. Without even imagining, They could tell the battle was extremely tragic, innumerable bodies and demon beasts' bodies entangled together. The land under their feet had all turned completely deep black. That was the color after being dyed with blood. Walking into that residence, inside and outside every room, entrances to critical tunnels, they could see the remnants of the tragic battle, in some places corpses piled high up, apparently to fight over this small entrance. The two parties advanced waves after waves, desperately fought, stepping over their comrades' bodies and wrestling tirelessly. In the courtyard, the group began to see a few demon beasts' bodies which were huge in size, some even bigger than the residents, but these once savage and ferocious beasts could only now lie quietly in this mortal hell, waiting to rot. The stink of the corpses in the air had reached a terrible degree, but the good faction disciples instead seemed better than before, because the tragic scene before them made them more indifferent to this stench. Just that, no one looked fine, no matter who it was. These people's countenance looked almost the same as the dead. They continued deeper into the residence, more bodies appeared before them, and now nobody knew just how many evil sect disciples and demon beasts died in this valley. They walked almost subconsciously in, walked. Every one of their faces were wooden, every one firmly held their own magical weapons, refused to relax even a little. After passing innumerable bodies, they came to a mourning hall. The reason they could tell it was a mourning hall, because they saw a coffin in this room, and in this room, the battle seemed to be the most intense here. Describing it as the bodies piling as high as a mountain did not seem exaggerating. It was also here, the group discovered many of the familiar evil sect bodies, Bai Duji, blood-sucking vampire, Elder Duanmu. These once all-powerful, invincible evil sect people, at the moment died with grievances hiding in this place. Many of them still had fear on their faces. Anyone could imagine, but nobody wished to, what kind of scene they witnessed before they died. As their investigation deepened, Xiao Yi Cai and the other slightly older ones in succession found even more famous evil sect figures, including God of Poison 3 disciples, many important figures from Hehuan sect. However, for Ghost King sect, although most of the dead disciples were wearing Ghost King sect uniforms, but very little of the well-known figures were found. Everyone slowly gathered to the front of the hall, saw each other's countenances. Xiao Yi Cai hoarsely said, "A lot of people died here. The important figures of evil sect are all here. Seems like all of Wan Du clan are dead." Yan Hong, who was beside, was deathly pale, said quietly, "It is the same over there. Many were dead from Hehuan sect. Even San Miao madam is too there." Lu Zueki's face was pale, her teeth clenched tightly together, her expression complicated. She looked like she could not bear, looked disgusted too, and for some reason, fearful. As the last person to join the group, she suddenly said, "Saw any of the Ghost King sect people?" Everyone shook their heads together and then was startled slightly. Li Zun, who was standing beside, looked even more terrible. Xiao Yi Cai glanced at him, spoke to Lu Shueqi. "Many of the dead are Ghost King ordinary disciples, but seems like did not see well-known figures' bodies." Lu Zueki's expression relaxed slightly, but Li Zun's eyes suddenly glimmered, coldly said, "Xiao senior brother, have you forgotten that these beasts devour humans? On the way in, we saw many white bones. Who knows those Ghost King sect of elders, would they have been?" A cry interrupted Li Zun's words, but it was Yan Hong who could not bear it, ran to a corner and vomited again. Li Zun was startled for a moment, then sighed and stopped talking. Fa Xiong looked like he could not bear to, with Fa Shan together chanted quietly. All of them knew, although Li Zun's words were harsh, but the possibility was high. Xiao Yi Cai, Lin Jingyu and the rest had complicated expressions, slowly looked down. Only Lu Zueki's face was bleak, her pale face without a trace of color, even her body trembled involuntarily. But this delicate and cold woman did not look down, she slowly looked up to the sky. In that limitless clear sky, even the clouds above the valley looked blood-red. Lu Zueki's lips moved, looked as if she wanted to shout out something, but eventually not a sound. This video will end here.